I suppose I could do a little theoretical talking since I'm out here just waiting for paint to dry. I'm going to be 70 years old pretty soon. I came along in 53. Now, think about it. Chevy came out with an overhead valve V8, 265 cubic inch engine in 55. Before that, there was other overhead valve V8s, but the Cadillac 331 was an overhead valve V8, and that's what people were putting in their hot rods. And Chevy came out with this little small block, which was the basic for the 283, 265, 283, 327, 350, 388. Is that right? 388 or 338 or no 388? Whatever. All them motors, the 400. All them small block Chevys for 50 years, maybe. I don't know if they're still making them or not, but I saw when fins became popular, and I saw when fins became unpopular. I remember when cars had the front end of them designed more or less to look like rocket ships. Not a thought was ever given to fuel consumption or wind resistance or anything. That time came and went, so you had the 57 Chevys and the 59 Fords and all them cars with the front end that looked like it was lurching out, reaching out, trying to go a little bit faster, and had big fins on the back like a rocket, which was a, throwback to World War II and the Korean War and all that. And that time passed. And after a while, they figured out they need to do something to cut down on fuel mileage because we had a gas shortage. A lot of y'all don't remember that. And that was back in the 70s, so they knocked the compression ratio down on the pistons in all the cars, and they cut everybody's cars down from like 350 horsepower to like 160 or 70. That was a bad time. They put big fat bumpers on the front to keep people safe in a crash and things like that. That was annoying, but I mean, it's just things that people did to deal with what they had going on. Well, time passed, and after a point, somebody figured out that wind resistance had something to do with it, so they started making cars look like shoes. The front sloped down, and it goes up like an egg, and the back sloped down, so that the wind just sort of poofs right over it, without any interference whatsoever. So we got all these cars that look like shoes, or potatoes, or and a hot rod will look like a tennis shoe. I mean, they'll make a little, souped up Japanese car. It doesn't even have to be a Japanese car, but they'll make one with the hint of a fin on the back, and it look about like a running shoe. I guess where I'm going to with all this is what's happening in the new age and how I fit into it. Because, when I was young, I idolized where I am right now. I played in the sandbox with a little rubber car that looked about like my rat rod looks, and I had another little car. It was a little rubber 56 Plymouth. It looked about like Christine, and I had a little green Ford Ranchero 58, 59. It's 59. It's 57 Ford Ranchero pickup truck. These were all my rubber cars. And I dreamed about growing up to have these kind of cars, and over the years I read hot rod magazines and all the street rodder, rat rod. It was a street rod. Actually, the National Street Rod Association was invented sometime after I got out of high school, and I was a charter member of the National Street Rod Association. Which meant that you could be one of the very first people that ever got in on that. Of course, I mean, it's still around, but I didn't stay a member. And then people came out with these engines that burn less gas and has more power, and they're cheaper than, say, a small block 350. And a lot of people are throwing them in their cars. I know Brian, what's his name out there, YouTuber with the yellow truck, put one in a big old Buick, and man, that was slick. That was a slick-looking setup he made there. We call that an LS engine, I guess. And they tell me them's cheaper than buying an old Chevy 350, and they get better gas mileage and they got more power. I thought for 2 minutes about doing something like that instead of doing what I'm doing. Well, I was actually doing what I'm doing. I thought, why didn't I do that? But then it occurred to me that I'm living in my time period. And in my time period, a small block Chevy with fuely heads and a lumpy cam and Edelbrock intake and all that, that's the height of glory right there. And I'm living in the height of glory right now. And on the horizon, or just looking over the horizon, I'm seeing that they're going to be making electric motors that you can drop in something like that Rambler or any of them cars I got back there. You can bolt in an electric motor and hook it up to the drive shaft. And just think about it. Everything it takes to run a gas engine, you got to have, you got to have a water pump, you got to have a radiator, you got to have a radiator fan, you got to have water, you got to have antifreeze, you got to have oil, you got to have fuel, and all the things that goes along with that, fuel lines and fuel tank and intake manifold and a carburetor. Well, they did away with carburetors, but us old heads, we still use them. All of that is eliminated and so much simpler if you got a little electric motor sitting under the hood. All it does is just whiz away, just, put some electricity to it and it goes zing, instant torque and all that. And that's the future. And a lot of people have a hard time with the future. I'm not one of them. I tend to think that being at an age where you can step into that new thing that's happening is pretty awesome. And in a way, that's where I was, born in 53. If you think about the cars that were being made in 53, they were okay, but they wasn't nothing like a 55 Chevy or 57 Chevy or a 61 Mercury Cyclone with them little stars and chrome-plated fins and all that, Mercury Comet, things like that. That's beautiful cars. I was a part of all that. I was a part of rock and roll being invented. Rock and roll was invented during my lifetime. I was alive when Buddy Holly died. I was a part of all that. There is young people out there today who are going to be a part of all kind of new things that we can't even imagine yet. And I thought, I saw a little electronic motor you could bolt in your hot rod. I was looking at that and I was thinking about that and I thought, old man, although I admire that and I feel good about the young people that's going to be able to pick that up and run with it, because just imagine all the things they're going to do with that as time goes along. I mean, right now you can complain about all the problems with electric vehicles, but you give time. It's just like when they started making gasoline cars, and everybody was saying, "Oh, it'll never take the place of a horse." Well, they was wrong, and there's a lot of people that are wrong now about what's going to happen to these kids' world. And we got some smart kids out there. Y'all can criticize them all you want, but I'm proud of the younger generation. They got their heads in the right place as far as I'm concerned, for the most part, and I cheer them on, buddy. I'm all for them. But I just said that because when I croak off, I'm going to leave somebody some museum pieces as far as hot rods go. There'd be Chevrolets, Roadsters, sedan. I got a sedan, I got a Roadster, I got a little daily driver, Rambler kind of car. All of them got big V8 motors, gas guzzlers, thumpy cams, and all that fun stuff. That Studebaker down there's got Corvette heads on it and all that. It's the newest of the new. It's got the new Corvette heads. It's, they swapped it from fuel injection back to carburation, lost a bunch of horsepower and a bunch of fuel mileage in the process. But I mean, if you're going to have a hot rod, your carburetor just cool. So anyway, I guess I said all that to say all this. This is where I am in life. And, in this area of being is probably at some point where I'm going to finish up on life, and there's going to be a lot of stuff left over for people younger than me to come along and figure out what do we do with all this old man stuff. I hope somebody takes care of it, because there are people today that still have horses and wagons, and even though the horse and buggy days are gone, there's people who've cared for some of these old things, and I hope there'll be people that care enough to take care of some of the old things I got. There's a lot of people won't know what a set of Fuelie heads are, what a set of power pack heads are, any of that. But there might be a few that do, and there might be a few that, care about them enough to acquire them and take care of them, and I'm hoping that'll be true. In the meantime, I'm going to try to stretch my life out as long as I can to be here as long as I can, because I'm enjoying the trip. This is an amazing world. I look around and see a lot of things happening. I think there's a lot of good things happening.